Good evening, everyone, and welcome to SWEDTalk, Sustainability from A to Z. It's really great to be here. Just a little introduction about tonight's event. So Sweden-Hong Kong Sustainable Fashion Days is a joint organized event by the Consulate General of Sweden and the Swedish Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. We'd also like to thank our strategic partner, the Hong Kong Design Center and Fashion Asia. And we'd also really, of course, like to thank the Mills. We are actually at the Mills Fabrica right now recording the event, so thank you very much. There's a fantastic fashion exhibition, by the way, by the Swedish Institute of Fashion Revolution called The Future of Textiles that is on display until June 8th. So please don't miss that. So that's happening here at the Mills upstairs. Today's discussion is really aimed at raising a little bit more awareness and asking deeper questions about the fashion industry and sustainability within the industry. Just a couple of admin points before we dive in. Please do send your questions into the chat. We are going to say, please no marketing in the chat. Thank you very much. We will also, by the way, be publishing this talk on the SWEDTalk website, which is swedenhk.com. So you will be able to watch it after. So it is being recorded, as you can probably tell. But I think that's it. I think we can now dive in. So my name is Sonali Figueres. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Green Queen, which is the largest sustainability media in Asia. And I'm really delighted to be moderating this panel because there's a lot to say about fashion and what the direction is. So without further ado, we're going to start with one of our panelists who's dialing in from Sweden. Jessica, let me turn over to you. So we have Jessica Cederberg-Wadmarsh. She is the Global Sustainability Director of Gant, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about herself. Jessica, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on the panel. Very honored to be here. I'm Jessica. I work for Gant. We are a 70-year-old brand, a lifestyle brand that was born in the US, and we were raised in Europe. We have our headquarters in Stockholm, but we have a sourcing, our sourcing office is in Hong Kong. So we are connected in both ways here. So that is really good. We make premium preppy clothes that is designed for a long life. And we also have a lot of work done for sustainability. I have worked with sustainability for the last 30 years, so I'm a bit of a nerd. And I also was blessed with a grandmother who was a dressmaker. So for me, I am very passionate about sustainability. And I worked for the government of Sweden for 8 years with climate issues. So I'm really looking forward to a talk on sustainable fashion and all the different nuances that that contains. And we would like to kick off with a small film about our stand on sustainability. So if you can please show the film.
Our relationship with clothes is complicated. It can show our personality and help us break out of our identity. Right now, our industry is in need of repair. And going full circle calls for everyone to get involved. It's complicated, but not impossible.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That's awesome. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Alyssa Berggren. She is the Senior Manager of Shared Value, the New World Development COO, and the G for Good co-founder and COO, as well as On Board for Good. That is a mouthful. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about all of that, Alyssa.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Alyssa from New World Development. So we are one of the largest land developer in Hong Kong. So we own like schools, hospitals, an insurance company, bus, ferry. So there's a lot that we work with. And creating shared value is very fundamental in how we do business at New World Development. So we believe in contributing, creating value for both shareholders and stakeholders. So we should be making an impact to the world while contributing to the ongoing success of our business. So we ongoing do a lot of incubation, investing in social innovation. We have our sustainability SBD 2030 to contribute to the environment. So there's a lot of do good things that we're trying to do within our corporation. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Alyssa. It's great to have you. All right. Next, we have Toby Crispy. She is the founder of Fashion Clinic. So tell us more about what you do, Toby.
Okay, I've been working in the fashion industry more than 20 years, and I started my own upcycling fashion label last but not least 7 years ago. And then I co-create Fashion Clinic with my partner Kay in 2017. And Fashion Clinic advocates to repair, reshape, and redesign our old clothes to close the loop of the consumption cycle. We provide individual upcycling service, and we also collaborate with fashion brands, corporate, and NGO to curate exhibitions, workshops, and events.
Next, we'd like to go over to our next guest in Sweden, Anders Ankerlid. He's the CEO and founder of A Good Company. Anders, please do tell us a little bit more about what you do over there.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for having me on the panel today. So I'm Anders. I run a sustainable and social impact startup called A Good Company. We are a fairly new company. We've been around approx 1.5 years. And basically everything we do is to inspire people to break habits of mindless consumption and change towards a more conscious decision making. And our company, we are a Swedish company from the beginning. We also have a Hong Kong office, as Gant has. We rely on 3 different pillars. First, we have our online shop where we sell thoughtful and sustainable and designed everyday products, which we do under the umbrella of being that each and every one of these shall be climate positive. Secondly, we have a platform which is called A Good Community, where we inspire and lift up individual actions or individual positive habits. This sparked from when we got B Corp the last summer. We got criticism from them fairly about that we are not doing anything locally for our community. And as a global brand selling to 50 countries a month, we then come up with the idea of a virtual community where we are lifting up individuals, and we also doing activist campaigns to raise awareness of climate change and so on. Then thirdly, we have a foundation, which is called A Good Foundation, where we basically are offsetting 4% of all our revenue directly into long-term initiatives to support climate change, be preservative about resources, and educate young people about what they can do, maybe teaching their parents into being more sustainable in their everyday life. And we do this with the bold promise of having a zero fee applied to it. So everyone is working voluntarily to that. And we're about to launch a circular fashion line, which we can maybe in the panel describe and tell a little bit more. But super excited to be here, and thank you once again for having me.
Thank you so much, Anders. That's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Next, we have with us Carmen Lai. She is the project manager for making zero impact fashionable at WWF Hong Kong. Hi, Carmen.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for the time we're sharing it. May I just introduce WWF and what do WWF do with sustainable fashion?
大家都知道 fast fashion 多年嚟消耗咗地球好多資源，可持續時裝慢慢成為咗全球時裝嘅大趨勢。咁其實有咩方法，點樣先至可以着衫着得 sustainable 啲？不如就等我俾啲 tips 大家啦。第一，大家買衫嗰陣諗清楚係想要定係需要，唔好因為好似好抵或者一時衝動就買啊。第二，每製造一件新衫都會產生一定數量嘅碳足印，其實好似 Emma Watson 咁，着多啲二手衫一樣着得咁靚。第三，好好保養每一件衣物，跟足晒個衣物標籤，咁件衫就會襟着啲，着極都咁新淨啦。第四，耐唔耐將個衣櫃反轉，唔單止可以揾翻啲好耐冇着嘅衫出嚟，仲會得到啲 mix and match 嘅新靈感。新 look 唔使一定要靠新衫嘅。第五，如果件衫只係有少少損壞，不妨可以試下自己修補，甚至將件衫改造，將佢 upcycle。第六，付出多少少購買質量相對較高嘅衫， 咁就會環保過買10件唔襟着嘅衫。第7，選擇用可持續發展物料製造嘅衣物，例如有機棉或者 BCI cotton， 咁就更加好啦。
Yeah, that's the consumer advocacy that we feel about sustainable fashion. WWF I found in Switzerland in 1961. We have now been reaching over 100 countries. WWF Hong Kong started in 1981 here, and we are focusing on a few areas: climate change, land and water, ocean, and so as what we also do public engagement, and so as education. Sustainability, when we go through the SDG from UN, fashion industry has been closely connected with most of the area. When we talk about sustainability from A to Z, the majority of the SDG goals are connected. How we connect together through our project, making zero impact fashionable. We collaborate our industry from leadership, and so as the supply chain, innovation, so as the consumer, all together to make a change for the world and to being sustainable. We are really, and that's what we do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next to Carmen, we've got Caroline Berger. She heads up social and environmental sustainability at Hopland Limited. Do tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. This is super exciting. I think this topic is more relevant than ever, and I really look forward to this discussion today. So Hoplund is a lingerie and swimwear manufacturing group. So we also co-create products together with our customers. We have 10 factories today in China, Bangladesh, and Indonesia, but we're also opening up in Ethiopia. So we do cut to pack. So that means that we get fabric and we cut it in our factories and we sew it, we pack it, and then we ship it to our customers. So for us, when we talk about sustainability, it means both environmental sustainability and social sustainability, which I think is in line with some of our customers, such as H&M. We're also looking at sustainability in this way. So I think it's important for us to not forget the social side of sustainability, but I'm sure we'll talk much more about the definition and what it means to be sustainable later. But thanks again for having me.
We absolutely will. Thank you, Caroline. And finally, last but not least, we've got Harsha Vardhan, who's the Global Environmental Manager at H&M Group. It's quite the job, quite the big job there.
Thank you, Sonalyn. Hello, everyone. A brief introduction of H&M Group. I guess most people know H&M as a brand, but H&M Group has 7 other brands with unique identity. It's Stockholm. We have headquarters in Stockholm. It's a 73-year-old company, more than 5,000 stores in 74 countries. So it's quite a big operation. And we are sitting here in this beautiful The Mills in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is a very important part of our business because we have our global production office here, and I'm part of that team. And we have been working with sustainability for more than 25 years in different topics, a lot of ups, many downs, a lot of appreciation, a lot more criticism. So we have learned a lot in these 25 years, and I'm happy to share some of those learnings with everyone and also to learn from experience from others on the panel. I also have a short video just to show not just about what H&M is doing, but touch upon what kind of challenges we have in the industry and more about call to action towards customers, because I think we have to do it together with customers and we often forget that. So it's a very short video about that.
Every day we wake up and create. Melodies, art, fashion, life. We innovate, update, invent. Knowing the future is already here. Old truths abandoned, new truths invented. It starts with one, then resonates in all of us. It's a collaborative thing. We all play a part in forming those magical spaces where new ideas take shape. Together, we can come up with things that redefine the whole fashion narrative. Like turning fishnets and nylon waste into yarn, making fabric out of eucalyptus trees, or help farmers grow cotton in better ways. And by 2030, we will only use 100% recycled or other sustainably sourced materials. Try and come up with something new, cut and paste, rewear, reuse, recycle. Find what has been forgotten, put it together in a brand new way. Because the thing is, when it comes to fashion, nothing is too worn, torn, or used to get a second life. So speak your mind, inspire, get inspired, and more importantly, feel that this is important. In the end, we never settle. Neither should you.
Thank you so much. Before we dive into what I'm now really excited for is a very layered conversation, we've actually managed to get your video working, Toby. So we're going to have a quick look at that. Thank you.
因為 fast fashion 令到大家好似好容易就可以去買到一啲嘢裝扮自己，買咗又冇感覺，掉咗又冇感覺，更加令到大家不斷咁樣用一個好似唔使心思嘅價錢就去買翻嚟啦，亦都唔會好珍惜佢啦。咁有啲可能你冇用過就掉咗佢啦，就令到地球去消化我哋嘅廢物嘅壓力好大。我哋一直咁樣去沿用嗰個系統咧，只係將我哋現有嘅資源咧耗盡，咁我哋就玩完嘅，咁根本就唔可以持續發展嘅。
佢都叫幾 hit 啦，幾過癮咁咪買咯。咁但係因為始終勾咗啦嘛，即係唔會再做，因為佢好浮誇㗎。但係又唔使得掉，因為都幾貴咯。呢件衫我已經着唔到啦，因為佢實在太細件啦，而家已經變咗。呢件係我只係洗咗2次咧，就已經開始有一件可能由中碼嘅衫已經變一件細碼啦。佢係又冇乜縮水㗎，但係就太長啦呢件衫。
可能因為一啲潮流啦，咁令到佢睇落好似唔適合再着嘅。咁但係嗰件衫可能佢背後有佢嘅故事啦，又或者佢嘅品質係好值得保留嘅。咁因為呢個咧就因為你中意佢個圖案啦，咁我覺得佢哋夾埋一齊係 OK 嘅。咁所以我哋都係夾埋咗一齊啦。咁譬如你條領咧就唔夠啊嘛，就扣唔到啊嘛，咁我就將佢哋拼合埋一齊啦。咁將個形狀同埋個 fitting 令到你舒服啲啦。我覺得即係佢嗰件衫嗰個 pattern 同埋顏色好靚嘅，咁所以我就將佢變成咗呢條少少低浪嘅褲啦。
我冇預咗條褲咁嘅樣，其實我係預咗件褸係變咗成個袋嘅。而家係變咗2件嘢咯，咁咪 surprise 啲，同埋最緊唔會撞啊嘛，同埋撞衫係一樣好悲慘嘅事，咁整完出嚟，又 OK 嘅喎，即係我又唔會唔着，成功咯。
Recycle 係只要你可以循環再用嗰樣嘢咧，就叫 recycle 噶啦。但係 upcycle 咧就要講求嗰個美感啦，同埋個工藝，即係點樣令到嗰樣嘢嘅價值再提升。其實我嘅目的係要令到嗰件衫喺嗰個 owner 身上邊嗰個生命係可以更加長啊！即係最緊要就係個 owner 會再一次咁樣喜歡翻件衫，同埋使用得佢耐啲咯。Choose well, buy less and upcycle 啦。
鞋我以前1個月買1對㗎。當然啦，要追上潮流嘅尖端㗎嘛。係咪㗎？真係個男仔。我係一個名牌老弟嚟嘅。
但係好矛盾㗎，你又覺得嘥，但係你又貪你又中意買衫，中意襯衫嘅時候。
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I think before we go deep into fashion, we need to kind of address the kind of pandemic elephant in the room, which is that if we were having this discussion 3 months ago, we would probably be having a little bit of a different discussion. So I'd like to kind of start with, how COVID-19 has really changed the conversation around fashion. I think we have broken supply chains, we have interrupted retail opportunities, we have consumers that want to do better, we have brands that want to do better. So I'd like it if you could all share a little bit about, you know, the new normal for fashion in a post-COVID world, knowing everything we now know. So maybe we'll start with Jessica.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would like to say that it's very interesting to see now that also financial aspect is coming together with sustainability aspects, like not having that many seasons. We are a slow fashion company, so for us we have timeless and clothes that have a quality that can be worn for a long time. But now we see other brands taking the same positions with this due to the pandemic, that they want to cut down. And of course they say it's because of sustainability, and that is good. I think that we need to be open that sustainability can have win-win. So it's both for the planet, it's for the financial structures, and also of course for people that is working with this. But I also would like to say that one of the things I think has changed mostly is that the transparency that we're now experience with supply chain has not been spoken about so much before as it is now. Although I think that if you are a fashion brand, you know that you need to take care of your supply chain, because that is like the foundation of your work. So I think that that is not to be bragged about, but something to be, of course, always taken care of. And I would also like to stress that even though everybody here is really working with sustainability is not a main thing for fashion companies globally. It's still a minority of the fashion companies and companies globally that actually is doing sustainability work. So we should all be proud of being part of sustainability work within our industry.
Thanks, Jessica. So Caroline, you're on the supply chain side of things, and you're working with your clients, producing for them. So how's your new normal going forward? I mean, you know, not being able to go on site, factories closed. What is it looking like for you for the rest of the year from a sustainability angle?
Yeah, wow, it's been a few very disruptive months, I would say. So it started with raw materials being delayed coming out from China. And then, of course, we had a lot of canceled or postponed orders, which affected our cash flow. And now we're seeing COVID starting to spread more rapidly in places like Bangladesh and also in Indonesia. So we had our factories closed in Bangladesh for a little over a month. So, you know, I think it's really important for us to show our values, right? So during a time of crisis, that's really where your values are put to a test. So for us, that was really important that we made sure to continue to pay all of our workers, that we didn't lay off workers during this difficult time, even though we were also struggling as well, because we had to work with our customers on how we could postpone, or we also had to deal with canceled orders, right? So it has definitely affected our business. But the good thing for us is that we're primarily like a laundry company. So I think that's one of the product groups that consumers will continue to buy. Yeah. So it doesn't matter so much if you're spending your days at home or if you're out on town. But I think with people being in lockdown, it has given us all a lot of time to reflect on consumption patterns and all of that. And it seems like all the trends are pointing in the same way, like sustainability and consciousness will be even more important going forward.
Harsha, obviously you're presiding over a massive company in terms of supply chain and retail presence. This must be very disruptive because it's covered all your markets. How's H&M adapting? What's the main mission?
I think I agree that what it has brought forward is this value proposition, right? What we as a company stand for. I think one thing which is good is that there are a lot of climate skeptics talking about, you know, there is no pollution, there is no human pollution, but they're all kind of silent now because you can actually see the difference. You know, you see blue skies, you see clean water. So there is increased focus on environment part. But obviously, there is a big disruption when it comes to social and job security in supply chain. And what we have learned really is the value of partnership. And of course, relationships starting from home, we're all locked down and in the same apartment with the entire family. So you need to build that relationship. But in the supplier and customer, because someday, going forward, we'll be getting out of this situation. The only companies which will survive are the ones who will value their relationship and partnerships. And that has been a lot of discussion within H&M, and how do we maintain those partnerships with suppliers? How do we make sure that we take them along with us? And this has not been easy. Of course, we still have to cancel orders. But when we do it, if you keep that communication going, and if we tell them that we are in this together, and then we will, when we come out of it, we will build this together. So far, it's worked, but I think we are still in the middle of it. So we still have to see how it goes.
Okay. Anders, I really want to turn this question to you because you're curating a selection of products. So I want to go more into, what makes a brand sustainable? When you're curating your retail selection, what are you looking for? I mean, it's a word that gets pushed around a lot, but what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think for us, sustainable goes, it's into one extent, a very easy question to answer on, since it goes into everything we do. And into another extent, almost an impossible question to reply on in a panel who hasn't have 9 hours to listen to me. But if I'll try to sum up a little bit, we look into all parts of a production, all parts, starting from basically the idea of a product that can be made out of basically anything. If we can replace an ordinary product with something sustainable, then we look into the capacities needed of making the actual products. All goes from workers to energy source to taking care of waste materials. Can that be reused in a different manner? Into packaging, which I think is an aspect that a lot of companies are still missing out. They're focusing a lot on the actual raw material or on the product itself, but are shortcutting a lot into how to ship the product in a sustainable manner in a material that is needed for protection, but also can be maybe reused as an end consumer material. And then from that, how to ship to customers, even if you run a brick or mortar store setup, or as we do, more of a D2C brand selling directly to consumers. How do we send out these items to them in a sustainable manner, and how can we educate them about the efforts? Taking a shipping alternative may be taking a little longer, but it's more for the environment, a better alternative rather than express. And how can we, in a sustainable and responsible manner, also take the items back and make something either something new or another item of that. And just a short note, when we are looking into our circular fashion line, the last piece there has really been the most struggleful part, and where I see, who's not coming from the industry previously, that is a lot of talking about making things circular, but in reality, speaking from the experience of talking with maybe 150 different factories, in reality, that's still a big step to take, to put it at least. So that's how we see about sustainability, and we care for all of these aspects, and I think that's why we are so, into some extent, considerably slow in launching new products and items, since it takes a long time to understand all of these puzzle parts that in the end delivers a good product for our consumer.
Thank you, Toby. Let's dive right in. So Anders has mentioned this last part of circular, the circular part of fashion, and you work a lot with upcycle. I mean, for you, is sustainability about upcycling?
I think as we see the sky getting clear when the factories are closed during the global lockdown, and I think local production is getting more important after the pandemic. And I think upcycling design and after sales service must be included in this new system. Yeah.
So local upcycling.
Yeah.
Carmen, what about you when you're educating people about sustainability? How are you defining it?
And sustainability is how to make harmony with how people connect well, be in a harmony with our world. I think it's like our mother world that are also so as the wildlife, the biodiversity, everything that we conserve and we cared about. Sustainability after the pandemic, over the fashion side, from our point of view, is there. First thing, the pandemic made people connect back together, connect back people together, so as connect them back to the future. Basically, the buying pattern, they really think before they buy. They really want to make a better choice. They really want to empower. They do more research during the pandemic time. Also, the value they look at is not only on the dollar side, but also how can I make a better choice to make the people awareness, to make the world better, which is to be continued through generation. That's what sustainability means to everybody. It's like a balance from economic, social, so as an environmental side.
Simon. Jessica, I wanted to go back to you because obviously Anders covered all these different parts that you have to think about to be a truly sustainable brand. And you mentioned before that, you know, the people in this panel are in the minority in terms of really kind of thinking about sustainability at the forefront. But obviously, sustainability has become the buzzword in the industry, and consumers want to see sustainability weaved in, so to speak. Is it okay to be a brand that is imperfectly sustainable, not getting it all right, but trying?
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to say that anybody who claims that they are sustainable is a liar, because there is nothing that is fully sustainable. Of course, we all need to work with sustainability, and I think that that is the beauty with sustainability. There are so many things that we can do here. But I want to touch back on Anders' point, and also at H&M, because I think that this is a thing for us as an industry and as a brand to take responsibility to do a majority of the stuff, to really make sure that we both work with our supply chain with sustainable materials and with climate and water and people, and also the planet. Then we can also invite the consumers to be a part of that, because we need them, because without them we can't get to a positive impact. And I think that that is also something that we at Gant, we have just launched the 7 rules. So we talk about refresh, remake, reuse, recycle, and all of that. And what we see from the consumers is a very big interest in that, to be a part of the whole impact that sustainability is within our industry. And I think that working together with others, that is the biggest thing that we can do. This is not a competition. This is a place where we can share knowledge, where we can share technologies, and where we can borrow from each other and really get there faster, because we have a stress here to do this in a faster way. And I think that that is then achieved by working together.
I'm hearing a lot of working together, relationship building, partnerships. It's quite interesting. You're all kind of saying the same thing. So Harsha, if we go on the topic of, you know, sustainability, sometimes customers, they want to know, is this sustainable or not? And I think what we're saying on this panel is there's no such thing as perfect sustainability scoring, because it's not really totally possible. But H&M is a company that's under the microscope on the global headlines. You know, there sometimes accusations on the supply chain and greenwashing, and how do you see that? What's the lens that you look at that through? What's your responsibility as a company to deal with those kind of headlines and understandings?
I think first of all, yeah, the whole greenwashing thing is, it should stay away. You know, greenwashing is not good for anybody and for the industry. Within H&M, I mean, we are 200 people working full time for sustainability. And wow. All of them are, screaming at our communication team that we have to communicate more, because we are doing so much more and you are not communicating enough. And their response is, we don't really know how to communicate all of this complicated stuff. And if we start doing that, there is a risk that we are, closer to this greenwashing. because the situation is the kind of complicated situation we are dealing with, whether it is farmers' issues starting with fibers, to supply chain issues, to international laws and social laws. It's very difficult to communicate to customers in a way that they understand. And that is where I think we need some kind of industry standard on how to do it. We have this Sustainable Apparel Coalition, which we are part of. And we are hoping that they will bring up a standard for transparency, for example, because the only answer for greenwashing is transparency. We have to trust that our customers are intelligent. We don't have to be filtered between our suppliers and our customers. We have to be transparent about what is happening. But we definitely need some kind of industry standard, because otherwise everyone is running with their own marketing messages. And I can understand it's totally confusing for every customer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Alyssa, coming to you, with the lens of all the different businesses, and as a real estate developer working with many different businesses and brands, what's your take on the greenwashing question?
Well, I think for greenwashing, it's definitely out there, and a lot of people are trying to avoid it, or it's scaring people. But I think it's fine to not being perfect. For example, like our company, we're creating shared value. Are we perfect in every aspect of what we do? No, but I think if we're willing to learn, willing to be open, willing to listen, I think that's a key importance. And embracing change and allowing baby step is very important.
So leaving space for imperfect change is essentially what you're saying. So what I'm hearing is, I really liked what you said, Harsha, about you trust that your customers are smart. However, as a person in the media, I can tell you that people often want binary answers. Is this sustainable? Is this not? So it's complicated, and I think it's difficult to deal with that. But for example, Caroline, your product is lingerie. So the problem with lingerie is what happens at the end. Is usually something that doesn't have a good secondhand resale market for hygiene reasons and other reasons and discomfort reasons. Where do you see your responsibility for the end of use of the product? Because you're not communicating directly with the end consumer.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think for us, it's important to design products with the end in mind, right? So you design it so that it can be recycled. And as you say, I don't think there's much of a secondhand market, but it's probably more just like breaking down the fibers, of course, making sure that it's done in a hygienic way and all of that. But we also have materials like metals and other parts of the products that also need to go into recycling. So I think it's a little bit more complicated if you compare it to just having like a mono-material cotton t-shirt, right? But I think that's definitely where we're going, and it needs to be possible in the future.
Are your customers, who are the brands and the manufacturer, are they asking you for this?
So we do use recycled materials, right, when we start the process. But as we don't have control over the end consumers, that would be with brands, right? So that's how you close the loop. So the consumers need to sort of hand in their used clothes, and then it needs to go to the recyclers so that we can get new fabric and recycle and close the loop again.
So I'm going to ask a bit of a controversial question. I'll start with Toby on this one, since upcycling. I mean, isn't the most sustainable thing you can do not to buy anything at all?
I think not stop buying is impossible. And to close the loop of the consumption cycle, Fashion Clinic advocates to choose well, buy less, and upcycle. And there are tons of usable and even valuable textile waste being dumped into the landfill every single day. So instead of exhausting the new resources, why don't we explore our creativity to think about how to make use of them? Yeah.
So, Anders, for example, when you're looking at your fashion line, are you looking to do everything out of upcycled fabrics?
So our idea has over this 14-month shifted a little bit. Our initial idea was to work with basically more upcycled rather than anything else. The more we learn about materials and fractions, what we are leaning on instead is to try to work with not blended fabrics, meaning if we do something in cotton, we keep it in cotton, and we're not blending in recycled polyester or whatever, which is typically what most brands are doing. And the reason for that for us is that we know if we are making that, we can then, in a sustainable manner, increase the recycled part, and we can actually have a closed loop of, let's say, t-shirts with more and more percentage of the recycled part. Since the tests we have done in cotton, where the first blend on the first production we are now running is, I think, 30 to 35% recycled. We have tested it up to at least 6 times, where we've been able to increase between 5 and 10% per time without getting it to be too stiff. So I think from our perspective, we are more focusing on trying to keep the fraction as clean as possible, rather than being obsessed about this has to be upcycled or this should be a blend of that and a blend of that. Since, at least from our understanding, that requires that you insert some sort of synthetic material, and due to the fact that it's so complex to then, when you're doing the recycling, to
break it down,
basically get the organic one or the natural fiber go into section left and the synthetic one go into the section right, has been, as far as we know, very, very complex. So that's what our aim so far has been. We also shifted our mind like bi-monthly, and that's why this has been taking forever, since the more we dig in, the more complex it gets.
Thank you. Jessica, did you want to share about upcycled fibers and fabrics?
Yeah, I want to share. I would also like to say that for sustainability to start with quality, I'm wearing a 50-year-old shirt. It says old as me, and on top of that, a new one. And I think that we use mainly natural fibers. 89% of our collection comes with natural fiber. And when it comes to recycling that, in the end, that is, as Anders said, a bit harder than recycling synthetic fibers. But we, of course, then need to look into this from a consumer point of view. And I think that all the research shows that a consumer very easily wants to see a tag that tells them this is sustainable. There are many different ways of communicating sustainability. And of course, here is where giving a guidance, but you also need to get into depth then. So that is why it's important to have that on your website, and also to have these panels where we can talk more about all the things we do behind. So I think that helping the consumers is a key part to drive sustainability as a mass for everyone, to get that point of like, oh, so here is a tag, I find that that is sustainable in that and that and that sense. But also, we are also part of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, and getting to the point where there is a way of doing this as a one unit is always going to be super important to, again, help the consumers and also the decision makers, because I think that when we take these steps to be proactive, we also stay a bit ahead of some of the legislation that doesn't always have the best in mind for everyone. It's good from one perspective, but sustainability has so many perspectives. So here's where you need to make sure that they are covered when you're working with this. And I think that that's why we say it's complicated, but it's not impossible. It just takes time, and you need to be really working, also looking at other industries and seeing how can we learn from them. So to connect back to your greenwash, I think that one of the things that we have really learned from the car industry is that they have traceability down to the minimum things in a car, because they have had that for so long. We have a way to go there. But then they was hit with a Volkswagen scandal, and that was the biggest greenwashing in centuries. So I think that here's where you need to look at the good things, but also make sure that you have transparency all the way through.
Thanks, Jessica. Harsh, I think you wanted to share, you mentioned that H&M's goal by 2030 is all upcycled or all natural, sustainable fibers. But we do have this massive textile waste crisis in the world. We have all these textiles that are sitting in landfills, and every day more is added. Do we not have a responsibility to kind of focus on that first before creating new? And what's your take there?
Yeah, that question, and connected to what is being discussed here on recyclability and recycled material. I know we collect old garments in our stores. Everybody can bring their old garments and drop it there. Last year we collected 29,000 tons globally. It's a huge amount. And it's not just H&M garments, right? It can be anything, and of course it's all kind of mix in that. Our dream or goal, or now it's, I think, slowly getting into reality, it should be possible to recycle any material in the future. I mean, we as an industry, we have been very lousy to use technology. We haven't really been good. But you probably heard Edwin in earlier panel discussion where Hong Kong Rita has been working with different technology. We have been collaborating with them. H&M as a company, we have invested in 5 different innovations, specifically working with recycled material. So I would say in next 4 to 5 years, things will change. And we are very hopeful that it should be possible to recycle all kind of materials. We may not get the same material that we are having today. 10 years from now, the materials will look different. But they will be upcycled, they will be recycled, and that will get us closer to what we want to achieve as circularity.
So the problem that Anders talked about, where you have this issue with being able to break down recycled fibers won't be such a problem.
That's a big problem right now.
Right, but you see that.
But absolutely, next 5 years, things will definitely change. We already see a lot of things coming up. We have this Resell, one of innovations that we are invested in. We released first collection beginning of the year called Circularity, and that is the first one. And you will see that series of such things coming up. It will take some time, but definitely next decade will be about upcycling and recycling.
Okay. Staying within the upcycle work, Carmen, you work with WWF. They're a very important conservation organization, especially when it comes to the oceans. Now, one of the big issues in upcycling, it's one of the kind of the negatives is obviously that a lot of the recycled and upcycled fibers they contain microfibers that then end up in our oceans because we don't have the sieve. We're not kind of collecting them. So what do you think about that?
I think our first thing, we'll need to educate people how to deal with the pros and cons when before you buying, and how you take good care of what you buy. Actually, microfiber, it doesn't only come along with our garment. So as you're buying parent, all the packaging, where does the plastic luggage come from? And actually, currently, we can see during this pandemic, the single-use plastic from the food we order, the deliveries, and all these. So as when we put online orders, all these stuff.
Absolutely, there's definitely a single-use plastic problem. But sticking to kind of the fashion side of things, a lot of synthetic fibers do have this kind of secondary problem of they release microfibers, and we're making more and more garments out of synthetic fibers. So what's the solution there? When you're educating people, how do you kind of deal with that issue?
Actually, just like what Teresa is saying, buy less, choose well. So as we will advocate how you should know, read the label, how to take good care of your garment. It also acts, and also when you get to the end of life, what to do with it. Many people just like, oh, okay, I go to secondhand, or I can retrade it, but at the end it goes to landfill. And that's the thing that we will need to empower people so as get business engaged on doing more, like what H&M is doing is one of examples of that.
Caroline, in the lingerie business, there's a lot of synthetic material used, and one of the issues about microfibers is it happens when you wash the clothes. This is the rise of athleisure. There's a lot more synthetic leggings, blah, blah, blah. So where do you see the responsibility there?
Yeah, I think there needs to be conversations had with like laundry machine manufacturers as well, right? So that we can start having filters, because all materials shed. And I don't think that people are going to start giving up polyester, tomorrow, because
Right.
it's in pretty much everything.
Right.
So I think the problem is, unless like everyone wants to buy a bag and put all their polyester clothes in that bag every time they do a washing cycle, that's possible, and then you can collect the microfibers and plastics that way. But I think it's probably more sustainable and to engage the manufacturers so that we can have a more holistic approach to this and try to build that into the machinery themselves.
So ideally a washing machine that would just filter this out before it goes into our waterways.
Yeah.
Toby, I'm gonna turn to you. For you, what is a circular fashion system for you? I mean, do you see secondhand and resale playing a big part of that?
I think in the sustainability system, it includes many methods such as secondhand clothes, clothes rental, recycling technology, upcycling services. So I think it involves so many parts, and I can only do my best for my expertise as an upcycling designer. Yeah.
Maybe Jessica, you want to speak to kind of the resale market, because some people say it's going to disrupt the entire market and be actually worth more. What's your take? Is this something Gant is looking at?
Yeah. First, let me just address with the fibers and stuff like that. I think there's a difference here when you use a synthetic fiber to have a performance for like outerwear, to have a lightweight performance that is against the wind, and when you blend in polyester fibers to cut the prices. Those are two different parts of the same conversation, and I think that is important to keep in mind. So I think that is also something. Sometimes you need a synthetic fiber to have the performance, like for the underwear, for instance, and then sometimes it's just thrown in to cut the prices. And that, I think, I'm hoping we're stepping away from that in more and more brands. I would like to see that.
But the microfiber issue, issue is relevant to both, whether you're cutting it cheaper or for performance, right?
Yes, absolutely. But I think that when it's there for the performance, it's still, I think that this will also evolve with technologies and research, but I think that just for cutting prices, there are other solutions to use than just throwing in synthetics. But back to your question regarding the impact of our of having a sustainable presence in stores. We have 4,000 selling points, and we have 750 owned stores. And of course, that has an impact with that from a retail footprint. But I also would like to say that one of the things that we see is that when you shop in real life in a store, we get less returns. People keep the things that they are buying compared to when they buy online. And I think that we have a talk on how much comes back online, but it's not compared to how much we're talking about the big impact it has to have a store. That is still not there. And we can see also that it caters to different people. Of course, the pandemic has made that we needed to push for everyone, to push to have a better premium experience online as well, not just in a store, because all the stores were closed. But I think that this is also different customers want different experience. Some want to buy online, others really appreciate being in the store. And I think that when we talk about single-use plastic, one of the things that our industry has is, of course, the coat hangers that is made out of single-use plastic, and they are now being turned into more sustainable materials. But for us, even in all our selling points, we only use wooden hangers that is sustainably sourced. So I think that looking at having a store is also a way of telling in real life what you stand for and what your brand values are, and that you can touch and feel quality, and also to make sure that you can engage with the consumers, talking about what we're talking about now, how to refresh your garments, how to repair them, how to even we're trying out rent for the first time. And we see that as one thing that we want to scale up, because sometimes you want to borrow something for a while and then return it, and then someone else can do it. So I think that here is where having that both presence online, but also in physical stores, can have a good impact if you do it in the right way.
That's really fascinating what you said about returns in store. Staying on the retail presence store, Alyssa, how can property developers, how do you work with your tenants? I mean, you have the beautiful space K11 Musea with lots of sustainable brands, and I think the company was instrumental in working with them to hold them to higher standards in terms of their retail space. Can you speak more about that?
Sure. So for our shopping mall, for newer shopping malls, you see that we actually implement a lot of waste-related programs. Mm-hmm. So as a corporate, there's a lot that we can do and a lot that we should do. And for our recent CEO, Adrian Chang, he's the third generation of the family. He's very strongly believed in sustainability. So with all the newer buildings, we actually have a lot of technology putting into while we're building that building. You will see a lot of greeneries inside, outside, to make the building more sustainable. But in terms of for our tenants, all of them would have to pledge with a food waste or waste program. And then also we're providing a platform for them to shine. When you look at K11 Musea, it's not only Gucci and Prada that you're looking at. You see a lot of smaller brands, for example, Save the Duck, Bottle Top, because actually the CEO go out there and look for these brands himself. Because a lot of these sustainable brands, they're not being seen. You don't very often see them in bigger shopping malls. So we want to provide a platform for them to shine, for them to be heard, for them to be seen, and for them to actually communicate with the mass public that actually quality garments can also be sustainable. So when you look at Save the Duck, it's actually equally warm. They actually invented a technology called Plum Tech that actually replace goose downs, but it's equally warm. So there's a handbag store called Bottle Top. They use recycled bottle tops from Kenya and also leather cutoffs to make handbags. And they're all very beautiful, but they're sustainable, and they're all about women empowerment as well. So a lot of these brands that we're looking for, we really hope that we can provide a platform for them to shine. And aside from our own tenant, we also invest in these companies. So there's one company called Picoti. It's a social innovation. So we also invented, actually use recycle material to make their t-shirts. So these brands, we're also trying to invest in them and empower them to use our platform to be heard as well.
Interesting. So that's the physicality of it. But Anders, you're communicating with people online. So how do you kind of connect with your consumers and kind of make it very clear that you are a sustainable brand and that you have these values online?
I think in everything we do, I think the only key part to be sustainable is not to brag about it too much. I think there's the previous discussion about the greenwashing thing. I think the main problem with that is that many of these industries are based on the ground of that push more and more consumption. What we are trying to do is to be as open as possible with everything we do. So we describe the factory, we describe the production techniques, we elaborate weekly, mainly on our failures when we are trying to make new products to enhance the knowledge for at least our customer base, how complex it is to make a new product. I mean, once a month, we have a progress update where we basically record a short video and describe what's happening within the firm. And at least for the last 8 months, we've been telling that we have great progress on our circular fashion line. And still to date, we are far from being able to launch. So I think that is the key component for us, being transparent. The other thing about being sustainable is to avoid being too pushy. The logical thing for the next step within e-commerce is to launch a lot of subscription-based models, and I think a lot of companies will try to lean into that. But at least as we see it with the vision we have with the company, it's a bit counterproductive launching subscription models if, let's say, a garment is still good looking and valid. And even though that is easy, one click to stop or pause the subscription, I think that what we are really trying to do is to to one extent, we obviously need to sell to be able to pay salaries to our staff and be able to invest and so on and so forth. But we also need to shill down a lot and believe in that if we are providing a good product at a reasonable price to consumers and educate them about everything about the craftsmanship that goes into the product, both in the pre-phase of developing, but also in terms of launching it and the afterwork with the circularity, people will come back. They will, when the product have reached its end life, we can hopefully help them take it back and recycle it if they cannot do them themselves in their local markets. And if they're happy about the product, they will buy another one. So I think that's how we are and it is, I truly understand that it is counterproductive into some extent having a brand who relies on growth, but I think that's completely has to shift, and we have to care for all aspects about it. And then it's maybe more, as we see it at least, sell less and be pushy as little as possible is the best recipe to actually be as sustainable you can be.
Okay, so don't brand and don't brag and don't be pushy. Otherwise, you may get caught into sort of.
To some extent, when you are very open about things, you are bragging. Since when we are telling about production techniques and the craftsmanship behind it, I think that is to some extent that we are actually really bragging, since we are proud of that. But pushing the sense to avoid sales, pushing the sense of avoiding, like here's a time for you to do rebuy, and we have loads of these. We have data of like predicting buying behaviors. When should a notebook or a mobile case, or whenever we have data on whenever that should be exchanged. But instead of being too pushy about it, we try to sit in the chair a little bit longer and not wait for the customer to come back, but at least shield down on the pushiness. Mm-hmm. Does it make sense? It's a bit counterproductive to be a brand not trying to sell as much as possible.
It's an interesting paradox. It definitely makes sense. I think Jessica wants to say something, and then I'd really like to ask Carmen a question.
Yeah, but I think that, yes, of course, you shouldn't be pushy, but you also need to tell, because there are so little things out there. There is still a minority of us doing this, so we need to share. We need to be transparent and talk about this, and we should be proud about it. I don't see that as bragging. Of course, there's a fine line here, but I think that knowing is also being a part of the solution, and you want to never stop learn about this and always continue, because there are so many things here that we can learn. And I think that hearing others talk about it is a one way to really improve how to get there faster. So I just want to stress that again.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what Anders is saying makes sense to me too, because I think some brands want to fly too close to the sun, and I think you can feel when somebody's being authentic in their branding and when someone's just kind of using the buzzwords to sell you something. So I think there is a fine line. It's a difficult balance. But on the education and awareness raising front, Carmen, you showed us this video that you use to kind of help educate people. Do you video and social media have become these very visual means to connect with consumers, and I think they're very powerful because of their visual nature. I think sustainability has come a long way because of social media and its graphic visual nature. But there is this kind of other side of it where a short video can also reduce many complex ideas to very small messages. How do you find the balance in your when you're creating content to educate people, where you want to educate them but you don't want to make things too simplistic?
Actually, I think the first thing is like we got to know our audience. When we do like education or doing the awareness building, starting from kindergarten kid to corporate, we so as a government engagement, we connect all people. And the thing is, like, we got to know the public, we got to know our audience and what kind of material, what the key messages in that particular area that we would like to pass down.
So you change your content depending on your audience?
Yeah, actually, it's just like it is not changed. Our content will be really universal. Like to be sustainable, but the way say, or when we go to school, talking to the kids will be definitely different from we talking to the council or dealing with government, definitely.
So know your audience when you
Yes.
communicate. That's a great message. Moving a little bit further along onto the role of technology, Harsha, you've shared that you guys in H&M is investing in many types of fabric technology, but what about other technologies? You know, things like AI for predictive stock. I think one of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot is the mismanagement of stock and how many brands are overproducing. And I had this massive conversation with a woman whose business model is to sell excess stock, and I said, why is there so much excess stock? And she said, well, there's nothing that can be done. When you produce on large quantities, you get excess stock. Is that true? I mean, can brands do better? Can supply chains be better? This is probably also aimed at Caroline as well. And can technology help with that?
Yes, I mean, we have suffered in the past as well because of excess production and not getting it right. And last 3 years, there has been massive investment in AI.
So it is from AI.
And you can see that there's a difference already now. There is a big change in how we are managing it, how we're predicting. And within H&M, there is so much focus on AI, and we call it sustainable AI policy, which is both for sustainability as well as just business. And it is definitely helping.
Caroline, on the tech side, is blockchain something you would be looking to invest in to have that supply chain transparency? I mean, the word transparency keeps coming up in this conversation. Blockchain is definitely one of the methods to get there. I mean, is there a future where we can literally use blockchain to pinpoint every part of the supply chain and have complete transparency as consumers, as stakeholders?
Yeah, I'm not sure if blockchain, it's a very tempting word, right? But I don't think that it's automatically the solution. But traceability for sure is, and I think it starts with that for sure. So there's a lot you can do for traceability, but also for us, if we just talk about technology, I think what happens in the factories, and if you want to use more technology for that is also very important for transparency. So if we can get real-time data, exactly what's happening for our water usage, energy usage, but also on the social side, so that we know for sure who is working, get full transparency on working hours, and also having really transparent grievance channels so that we can catch a problem as soon as it comes up. I think that's also something that we would be interested in as a manufacturer.
Let's stay on this point a bit. Sorry. Let's stay on the point about workers and their well-being, because COVID has exposed that across many industries, not just fashion, but meat and others, the construction workers, they're often, there have been hotbeds for pandemic breakouts because a lot of times the conditions are not great. So you're talking about transparency. How do you maintain kind of an oversight on your workers and their well-being while not kind of having a sort of surveillance feeling in the factory? What's the line there?
Yeah, so I mean, when people enter our factories, we have a lot of measures. So similar to what we have here in Hong Kong, right? So if you go into a restaurant, you have your temperature checked. Mm-hmm. Visitors have to sign a health declaration form.
Sure.
If anyone in their household is sick and things like that. So I would say we have pretty good measures when people are coming into our factories with hand washing. We have social distancing in the factories, people sitting further away from each other when they're having lunch, things like that. But I think the main risk is probably still when people are out in the communities, especially if you look at, poor countries and densely populated countries. That's out of our control, unfortunately, and it's still a risk.
Right, and that's definitely on the risk side of the pandemic. But what about just workers working in the right conditions and feeling that they have safe workplaces, both from a mental health perspective and a physical health perspective?
Yeah, so I think that goes back to the whole social dialogue question, right? So making sure that workers' voices are heard, that you have a transparent communication between management and worker representatives, and also that we have proper grievance channels in place so that workers feel that they can raise concerns and complaints anonymously, or if they want to give their name, there should be channels for that. If they want to stay anonymous, there should be channels for that. So I think that is really important to make sure that we know and we hear directly from the workers.
Do your customers ask you for this information? Do they want to know that the workers at your factories are being treated well? Your customers who are the brands that buy from you?
Of course. Yeah, I think that's the short answer is, of course, they want to know that our workers are.
This is something they're proactively asking about.
Absolutely. And even for grievances. So I think, I would love if we could share more of the grievances coming in and have that as a way of building trust, because I think it's a healthy sign if we get a lot of grievances. If people are concerned about, oh, this person sitting next to me, she is gossiping too much, or the food is not good. If we have a lot of grievances coming in, that's a good thing, because that means that workers are actually trusting the channels, and we're also more likely to catch something if it's something of a more serious nature.
Okay, last question before we open it up to the audience questions, of which there are many. Oh, my question was going to be for Jessica, but Jessica, did you want to say something?
Yes, I would also like to add, when it comes to the social aspect, that is also where it's super important to have third-party valid audits done, and have someone else, not me, walking around in a factory saying, oh, you look nice, how are you feeling, fine, and all of that, so that you have someone that you can trust between there, so that they can have that transparency and also share that within for others.
Audit.
And also
third-party audits.
Yeah, and also I think that also being part of big organizations like the UN Global Compact and also the Second Hig Index, where you also set up the standards, and where you have where you have a ground, this is what we stand on, this is what all of us are doing together. And still, it's a minority of us as companies that are part of that, but this is super important to get there. Otherwise, we will still be very unequal when we compare this. And there are so many things within sustainability. So to have that comparison is still important, to have a better perception as a consumer. But also I think that one of the key elements in this is people working within the brand. They want to know. They don't want to work for a company that doesn't do sustainability. Young people now are so much more picky than others, that if you don't put up your sustainability work, they're not going to come on board. And we need experience and knowledge and talent. And for that, we need to prove what we do within sustainability. So it's both internally, and also media are looking more than ever at this, which is great. They should be watching us. But I think that again sets the bar, that you have to do this in a strategic, planned way, and also have a very clear goal on where are you reaching for and when will you get there. So I think that also starts with you doing the work, and then you can include more and more, and also reaching out and working together.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, I'm going to ask everyone the same question. This is a surprise question. I want to know from all of you, before we go to the audience questions, what, as sustainable fashion missionaries within your respective companies and in your respective jobs, what's your biggest challenge that you're facing over the next 6 months? Alyssa, we start with you. Sorry, put you on the spot there.
Well, we're not exactly fashion experts, but
you're in the greater sustainability space.
Yeah, actually, for us, I think we're quite hopeful. I think the whole consumer behavior has changed. The lockdown has shown how business can actually address climate change or global warming and what we can do for sustainability. And people have seen how vulnerable the world is, and has raised tremendous awareness on social or environmental sustainability. So I think in the next 6 months, a lot of our projects, a lot of messaging that we've been trying to bring it out has been very challenging, but I think the trend of people are more aware of sustainability has accelerated tremendously. So now things are actually getting easier for us to educate on sustainability, and our projects are more well received.
That's a great answer, but I still want to push you a little. Give me one challenge that you're facing. It's great to know that some of the challenges you're facing are. I'll come back to you since I put you on the spot. Toby, what's one of your biggest challenges?
You mean during the epidemic?
Anything. You can pick anything. Just going forward, looking at your horizon. What's one of your biggest challenges?
Can I let somebody to answer first?
Sure. Does anyone want to volunteer, or we'll, Carmen?
I think the biggest challenge that is like we found some gap between people's understanding or business engagement, so as the public commitment towards sustainability while what's really happening. We are urging and we really see our SWR, we keep saying that we are limiting, we are reaching the limit. We got like 2030 targets to hit, and we are over consuming the world. But people think that they have already contributed a bit. We are contributing, but our effort is not enough. I think the challenge that we got, and as a conservation NGO, is like how to bridge the gap between what our normal as like a city citizen, that how we consume our planet versus what we really how to connect back to the nature. Say COVID-19, right? Like, so how do we treat our wildlife? So as what do we look at sustainability? How can we maintain our Mother Earth as peacefully as it is while we resume, and how?
Okay, so the gap between what we need to achieve and what we think we're achieving.
Yes.
Caroline, do you?
Sure. So, okay, in the short term, I think as many others, we had some of our budgets being frozen, right? So we have to pay our workers. That means that we're not going to invest in solar panels and, rainwater harvesting in the next 6 months, unfortunately. But that's the short term. I think in the medium term, it's to cascade our sustainability work to our suppliers. Right, to have them starting to report, being transparent in what they're doing, and also setting goals and starting to deliver on the sustainability side, right? In the long term, I think we as an industry need to work towards climate neutrality or being climate positive. So what is the answer to that? Is that to only maximize our facilities with solar panels? Or do we also need to talk to governments about like the energy mix and making sure that we start using more renewable energy? And what does that look like?
Harsha?
It's difficult to pick one when you're working for H&M. So no, I think short term, it's basically, just make sure that everybody is motivated still. I mean, it's a very difficult time for all of us. I mean, as I said, 200 people working with sustainability, things are disrupted. We just have to keep them motivated, survive these 6 months so that we continue our work. But I think long term, one biggest challenge is how to make circularity scalable. It is not enough to make it in our small little bubble for our company and our stores. It has to be scalable and it has to be accessible for the entire world. And that's not going to be easy. But it's not just for sustainability. It is also for survival of the business. If we don't do it, business will die. So we have to get it done.
Thank you. Anders, what's your big challenge going forward?
Jesus Christ, there are so many.
Pick one.
I think the one challenge, at least from my personal perspective, is to continue to find energy, since this is clearly like a marathon rather than a sprint, which goes with my personality a little bit. I always think there's an easy solution around the corner. And clearly this is going to take time to fix. One of that examples, we have set up programs with every factory we work with into like local improvements. It could be anything from helping them understand the workers' right to changing power supply system, testing new materials. And as a lot of people also stated here, that has been a little bit paused for logical reasons. And I think one clear challenge for both for me, but also obviously for the industry, is not to take this pause for granted, but continuously working with that. Since the only thing we will do when we are coming out from this, if we are not starting working with this now, is that we will go back to basics. I think there is I think people are heavily overestimating how used people are with habits. And I think I have been fairly positive about that we will, after this, have a tremendous behavior change. I'm not so sure about that anymore, since I see where I live that people are turning back with it, like when the sun comes out here, people are going back to the traditional behaviors. So I think that's our main challenge, to continue grind with the thing we grinded with before, and also find energy in this endlessly complicated whirlwind which we are experiencing every day, selling to this many countries and have this remote team, which we are fortunate to have into one extent, but also having a lot of issues with that when countries are closing down after one another and now opening up with local issues. So that will be mine.
Thank you. Jessica?
Yeah, we have set up 7 big strategies, and in those we have everything planned out. So we plan to have all our materials sustainably sourced in 2025. We're at 50% now. But I think that our main challenge is water. One of the things that we're talking way too little about is water. It impacts all of us, and there is so little water in the world that is fresh and clean and available and accessible to all of us. And our industry is really dirty when it comes to this. So here's where we also set up a goal to mitigate 50% of our water resources within to 2025. And with that, we need help. We need all the technologies, we need all the knowledge, and we need partnerships for this. So I think that for us, it is water. And that is one of the biggest issues that we have to take into everything. And it affects the planet, people, and of course the products. But that is our absolutely biggest challenge.
Thank you. Melissa?
Okay, back to me. Well, I think I would say being committed to our goal with sustainability. I mean, I agree with Caroline, with all the budget it's on hold right now. We do have a lot of plans before too on sustainability, on how we build buildings and how we have different investment in technologies to make our buildings more sustainable, and how to make the right choice in using our budget to stay committed, because it's not about a marketing tool that we're talking about. Sustainability is a real commitment that we're doing right now. So how being on a limited budget at the same time staying committed would be a challenge.
Yeah, I found the question difficult is because I think the biggest challenge to me is over, because the people are getting more understanding about the value of upcycling design and the craftsmanship. And all players in the fashion industry knows about the tendency of going sustainability. So especially during the epidemic, people getting bored at home and trying to find everything to learn to pass time. So I found more people who are more interested in handcraft and embroidery, hand stitching. So I found that I even have more opportunities for workshops and even writing special column for the magazine about sustainable fashion. So I think it's quite hopeful for me. Yeah.
No challenge at all, not even budget, not being able to do events?
Yeah, and maybe because my business is the smallest one here, so it's easier to handle. Yeah.
All right, well, thanks everyone for being so honest and for answering all the questions. There are so many questions from the audience, so I'm going to try to go through as many as possible here. I think I'll ask Jessica to answer this one, because she mentioned about, the question is, Jessica, what will be the solution for lowering returns during the pandemic?
Well, there isn't one solution. There are many solutions, I would like to say. So I think that this has to be from end to end, looking at that. And it also touches upon another thing that is one question here, and that is to do with transports and to do with that. And I think that we are measuring, all of us. I think that for sustainability, numbers is key. You need to measure, you need to make sure that you know what is happening here, and here, and see the long effect from here from one end to another, and also see all the detours it makes on the way. So I think that there is no one solution to that, unfortunately. But is that what you're looking for, or is there any other answer? Because that is a tricky question.
I unfortunately don't have the person who asked the question.
No.
So we're gonna have to hope that that's a fair enough answer and a very open and honest one. This is a question for Harsha. I won't lie, Harsha, there's a few for you.
I'm used to it.
Yeah. So this question is around the program you mentioned of collecting all the clothes in the stores. This person is asking if there's footage or data showing how much clothing you that is returned and what happens with them. So I think you've already answered the 29,000 tons globally that you diverted from landfill. But the second part of the question is, what happens to that?
Yeah, so this is published every year, sustainability report.
Okay.
And it's done through our partners. So that person can go through a sustainability report, and it's very clear on exactly what happens, how much is resold, how much is recycled and reused. So it's all publicly available information.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the third part of the question, because this is from someone else, but since you're on the same, and this is for Jessica as well, what do global brands like Gant and H&M do with excess stock, and how do you sustainably handle the excess stock? So is there overlap between what you do with the excess stock and the stock, the clothing that you collect from the recycle bins?
Some of it is yes, it's connected with that, but I think a lot of this excess stock is sold as in sale in most of the cases, and if it still remains, it has to be recycled. And that is where I was talking about AI and the value of AI. So that is where we had a lot of losses a couple of years ago because of excess stock, but now it's getting much better. But the only solution we have is recycling, if it still remains.
So no incineration and no resale down channels for excess stock for H&M Group?
Not really. I mean, no incineration for sure, but it's the next solution is recycling.
Jessica, what's your excess stock?
Yeah, we put both the excess stock and also repair, rent, remake, and all of those into the Gant 7 rules and for our circular bit. So that sits within that strategy. We have a very clear strategy to follow the EU waste hierarchy on what will happen with a product when it can no longer be sold for full price in store. So that follows a very clear chain. And of course, we also make sure that we don't dump this somewhere and to make sure that is. But there is also this thing about excess stock. We have very timeless products, so even if it is produced 1 year, it can still be sold. We have a never out of stock, so that then is replaced. So we have the same fabric, the same style, so when a pants get worn out, you can come back and buy the matching pants 4 years later, and we still have the same quality and fabric in store. So it's really important to make sure that you do it end to end. And also we are starting this autumn to take back from our consumers. We're taking back the Gant clothes, so we're different here from H&M, to see how to give those a third and a fourth life. And then, of course, if we can remake them together with smart, brilliant upcycling artists, that is also one thing that we're looking into. And I think that here is also the quality of the garment is also a way to make sure that they can have a long life. And I think that there's a question here as well for free repairs. We just launched a lifelong repair on all our jeans, and that will be from now on. So all our jeans now comes with a lifelong repair. And I think that also the fashion clinic is also teaching how people should take care of that. So before it ends as an excess stock, you need to make sure that you do as much as possible before it ends up in the end.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. You've actually answered another question from someone, which was Patagonia offers free repairs, and it seems like a good way to encourage consumers to use clothing for longer. Do we think that this is something a lot of fashion companies will do? And I think the answer is yes. I think H&M, was it Cause that does repair now?
Cause and H&M as well in some of the shops, call it Take Care project. I mean, it's still a project right now. If it works well, then it has to be scaled up in other shops.
So repair is definitely on the line. So the answer to that is yes. Patagonia is definitely a leader there, but it's coming everywhere. So another question. I'm going to ask this to, so Caroline, this is going to be for you because this is about social, I'm still trying to read the question. So in relation to the social impact of garment manufacturing, so this is in reference to a recent SWEDTalk movie screening and the plight of women involved. Do you think that in around 10 years, it will be more likely that basically everyone throughout the textile industry will be well paid, not just certain brands, or will they be replaced by robots? Right, Caroline, that's a big one.
I think we're still far away from having
just
everything automated and everything made by robots, right? So I think we still need people in our supply chain for the foreseeable future. But yes, the question around wages is very important. And I think we need to move away from only talking about minimum wages. We have been talking about fair wages for a while, but
livable wages.
There's also living wages, right? So these are three different concepts. So living wages is when you go out to the communities and you assess, like, what is the cost of living? And then you make sure that that person can support him or herself and dependents and pay rent, you know, have a decent standard of living and all of that. So that was actually something we were just about to launch and do these like assessments in all our locations right before COVID. So we were like literally
budget crunch.
Yeah, but also lockdowns, right? So we couldn't even go out to the communities and do this. But this is very important, and I think that's the future for sure. And we need to make sure that everyone, not just us as a tier 1 manufacturer, but everyone in the supply chain has a decent job and is decently compensated.
Including your suppliers, you were saying?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, great. There's quite a few questions around accessibility of sustainability. So we've got one question about how there's a paradox around sustainability because it's not affordable to the majority of people. So I think maybe that's not totally true with a brand like H&M, but there's also this idea that someone else asked, are we leaving people behind when we talk about sustainability? Is there going to be kind of this divide between people who are, can be sustainable and people who cannot be sustainable? I'm going to pass this over to Anders to start.
Sure. I think there are also a risk for a long answer here. I think one, we as consumers, if I take that hat on for a little bit, we have been used for such a long time that things are too cheap. And to make things sustainable, it doesn't have to be considerably expensive, but it is more expensive than buying the cheapest thing online. So I think that is one thing to take into account. Secondly, I think that there is a huge risk of dividing communities. If you have very little to live on, you typically lean on buying cheaper things, you eat cheaper things, you can't afford organic, and I think that will goes into consumption behaviors as well, and I think that's truly unfair and it's very uneven, but that's basically how the world is built. So I think what brands can do is to be as transparent as possible into what goes into the product, and maybe also, which I think we are proud of doing comparisons to help consumers to understand and by themselves realize the differences without pointing fingers. But obviously, being eco-friendly and buying organic or buying only conscious things, it is a matter of how much you can afford it. So that's like, and it will always be that way, even though that we as brands or whatever has ambitions into it shouldn't be, but obviously it's not, it is.
Jessica, you had your hand up before. Did you want to add something on this?
I wanted to add on this because it's about affordability. And I would say that, of course, different people have different perceptions of if they want to be a sustainable person and consumer or not. But at Gant, we made it the majority of everything. And also we didn't upcharge anything for the consumers when we stepped over to organic cotton or anything like that. That is something for us as a brand to take the cost for. It's not for the consumers to pay for. So doing the sustainability work, I found that it was very important that we take that charge and not put the charge on consumers to give that accessibility to everyone, not just the ones with a bigger wallet, and also to have a bigger impact to make it on the majority of everything that we do. I think that is also a tipping point. That is it something that you do only in a small capsule, or do you use the capsule to grow with everything so that you can implement that in a bigger way? One of the things that has come up as a question is the positive impact that sustainability can have. And I think that today we have focused a lot on all the challenges. But of course, working with sustainability, it's one of the key things that I find so much energy in, as that you can really make a difference with all of these conscious choices that you do. Taking a step away from doing like you always have done and taking one step at a time towards a positive future and a positive impact is really one of the key things that is such a great thing to work with every day.
Thank you, Jessica. Harsha, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think maybe it's a bit philosophical. I mean, when it comes to people who cannot afford, I would argue that they have more sustainable lives than us.
Agreed.
They eat healthy, home-cooked food. They don't buy more than what they need. They don't use AC. They don't travel by air. A lot of problems we're talking about is rich man's problems. And we should acknowledge it to some extent. So sustainability is not just about, rich man can afford. In India, for example, traditionally, it has always been a sustainable society where I come from, and now things are changing. It is becoming non-sustainable. So we can look at both sides of it, and it's not always true that it's more expensive to be sustainable.
That's true. On the side of buying less, there's a great question. Is buying less better than buying green? And how will business models change if consumers adapt to buying less? Toby, I feel this is for you. Which one's better, buying green or buying less if you have to choose?
I think buying less is more important.
So that's number one.
Yes. Because as what Fashion Clinic advocates, to choose well first and then buy less. So whether it's green or good, they are good products. So I think buy less is more important.
And how do you see business models changing if people start to buy less? I mean, this has an impact, right? If we all overnight start buying less.
It's also another advocate of Fashion Clinic, because we're concerned about how to close the loop of the consumption cycle. We encourage after-sale redesign service. So people can buy the good products and then make it last by using the after-sale service to repair, reshape, or redesign their pre-loved garments. So the economy can go on, even the people buying less.
All right. Interesting. What's the next question? Okay, there's a question about, I'm afraid I don't know what this means. Maybe it's a translation issue. What is your take on biofabrication, and how will it change the course of sustainability in the future? Will biofabrics ever be viable for the retail industry? I assume biofabrics are...
biodegradable?
I don't know if it
I'm not too sure what this term means. Maybe someone can translate this. But I assume we're talking about kind of new types of fabrics, which you kind of touched upon. Maybe like sustainable leathers and
probably
fabrics made from mushrooms and...
Would that be biodegradable plastic, as what you say, biodegradable leather? Maybe.
Okay.
I guess.
Maybe. Actually, we haven't covered that at all. Are we looking at more easily biodegradable fabrics in the future? Thank you, Carmen.
I think, there is one set of sustainability expert. They're talking about biodegradable as more important to manage the waste problem. Our opinion is that since we are so bullish about recycling in the future, we believe that it's not needed to be biodegradable, and that we want to recycle more and more. Biodegradable material is difficult to recycle, and most of the biodegradable
Why
materials,
is that?
because they biodegrade. I mean, they degrade into fiber quite easily. They're not strong enough to recycle. And they require special condition to biodegrade. And that is also not possible in a normal landfill, for example.
So these are not biodegradable just in open air. This is kind of industrial biodegradability.
Yeah,
so same issue in the packaging.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I hope that answers the question because I don't think anyone was clear with biofabrication. What else? We have a question about, okay, this is for Harsha and Jessica. Do you feel that sustainability in fashion can only be about complying, doing less harm, and reducing risk? Or can it also be about creating new business opportunities?
I can start. I think
great.
It's absolutely fantastic with sustainability that it can create new business opportunities. Rent is one of those things I would like to state. And also looking into this will of course disrupt the whole industry. Doing sustainability really from the ground up and in all the aspects will of course open up for new business opportunities, but it will also disrupt the old ones. And here is where, if you're working together, you can find them. If you're standing alone, you will very soon lose out. So I think that, again, sustainability is the greatest place to cooperate and not compete. So I think that again it's really a good time to find new business opportunities. Sometimes it's still hard because we still count the way that we had our ordinary business. So we know that renting out when it's being washed and all of that also comes with a cost compared to being. So here's where you need to find more numbers, how much positive impact it can have, and not just count all the little things that you normally counted on, but also put on the positive side and count on that.
Yeah, I think at least within H&M Group, we believe that sustainability is important even to survive as a business. It is not just about doing good and compliance. 20 years ago, it was about compliance.
Okay.
Just to give an example, I mean, 10 years, 20 years from now, there will definitely be fight between fiber and food. You know, there is a limited land and you either grow food or fiber. The only solution we will have is material that we will develop on our own. We can't rely on cotton farmers to grow cotton for us in the future. So we have to develop our fiber in order to make sure that our company survives for next 70 years.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because we got an explanation about the last question. They were referring to biofabrications and biofabrics. They were talking about, for example, textiles made out of algae or fungi or soybean. What?
I think
but that's the same problem as cotton, right? Because they're crops.
Yeah, and some of them are crops. Some of the, for example, we used orange fiber. Basically, it's from orange peels.
Right.
And that is waste from juice industry.
So that's good.
That's good. And then we have from wine industry, you have you can develop leather kind of material from wine waste,
right.
From grapes. So there are a lot of these kind of materials which are considered waste for one industry that can be material for textile industry.
And do you see that being in the future kind of a much bigger percentage of the...
Absolutely. I think they will create, now what we talk about polyester, nylon and cotton, they will be replaced by different kind of fibers in the future.
That come from waste or diverted from other sources.
But this also sits within circularity as a whole, for every industry to look at what is their waste and how can that be used in another part of another business. And I think that here is where we as an industry also need to work much closer with other industries and not just be within our group to look at what others have, like they don't. And we have seen this in other industries as well, like the food industry gives a lot back to the skincare industry that they before had to do synthetically and now can use the leftover from tomatoes, for instance, to make skin cream that is good for you. So I think that here's where we need to work with other industries as well and not just keep within our own little world, but to really broaden our horizons.
Great point.
Yeah. I can comment on that as well, since we are actually doing a lot of products that comes from waste from other industries. The main problem, as I will see when that comes into fashion, is to one, get stability. Most of these products, I'm not sure that H&M has seen that as well. The raw material itself is typically quite unstable. So when you're scaling up, you one, can be short on supply, or secondly, you can get different outcomes when you're producing. We see that a lot with our mobile cases we make here in Sweden as one example. They are different since we're taking it from the waste from a harvest, and the harvest is different every year, even though that we might not like it. That's just the way how life is when you are taking from agricultural waste. And I think if we can accept that as an industry, or we can accept that as brand, it is great. But typically what can happen is that you add in supporting materials that maybe when you're doing the life cycle analysis of that material is not the best option compared with a very stable material, if you have to throw away a lot of, or if the end life into after half a year is find it to be very short, or whatever it can be. But I think it's an very interesting topic, and I would say we have at least 5 different products that come from waste from other industries, but it takes tremendous time, and also you have to educate the customers about the end results might vary.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Good to know about challenges as well. There's a great question, I think, that we haven't covered as much today, which is about transportation. So a lot of industries, including fashion, you've got, the raw materials are coming from somewhere else, then it's made in a second place, then it's being shipped to a warehouse in a third place, then it's being retailed across the world. So the question is, the carbon footprint of one piece of clothing is pretty high, not to mention all the packaging. What's going on for that? Like, do we see a return to more local and regional production, having more, how does it work? Maybe Caroline, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on the whole transportation and logistical aspect, but definitely, we're moving some of our operations to a country like Ethiopia, because it's closer to Europe, which is our main market, right? So hopefully that will make it easier to shorten the lead times from the factory back to the retail spaces. But at the same time, we're still seeing most of the raw materials coming from Asia. So yeah, it's difficult, but I think ideally you just want to manufacture close to where you source, and then, also preferably have your customers close by as well.
But is it realistic to be in a world where, everything is manufactured kind of more locally and more regionally, or will there always kind of need to be raw materials and production that is further away? Jessica's got her hand up, so please go ahead.
I just want to clear one thing up. All the research shows that the biggest impact for climate is the raw materials and the processing of the raw materials. The transportation of a product, unless it goes by air flight, of course, is still small compared to all the other bits that you have your impact on. So you can still ship with a boat or with train or lorry the raw material from one country to another, and it still won't have the biggest impact. It's still what kind of raw material you choose, also how you process that, and of course, if you have a quality on the product, you have a very long lifetime. So it sits with all of those, and of course, we choose mainly to transport by boat because it's both environmental smart but also economically smart. But I think that here is also where you need to make sure that you understand the whole picture. And of course, but when you come to, we talked about having a store or sending back, we know that it has a huge impact when people buy 3 shirts of the same size and send back 2. That is not what we want on e-com either. So here's where you also need to educate your consumers of sizes and fits and all of that. But I think it's important to realize that the biggest impact comes from raw material and process.
Thank you, Jessica. One final question that we haven't answered. It's a little bit of of a longer one, so I'm just going to read it out. It's great that there are checks and balances in how the industry is going towards a sustainable fashion future. But somehow, with the criticisms the industry and some companies continue to get, no matter how good they're doing, do you think the criticisms are really looking at the bigger picture or merely throwing stones at the industry? How can we give them a more balanced information? That's a big one. Anybody want to jump in?
I think that is our biggest challenge as well, right? I mean, I think just because a lot of this criticism has helped us as well. I take this example of what Greenpeace did with detox campaign against fashion brands in 2011. When it first came out, it felt like, this massive criticism. They were doing protests in front of all the stores. But 9 years on, we see that how beneficial it has been to the whole industry, because we actually learned that there is something wrong in the way we are using chemicals. And we worked on this for the last 9 years, and now we see the difference on what kind of chemicals being used and how we measure it, how we report it, how transparent we are getting as an industry. So some of these criticisms are welcome and it's important. A lot more is, again, it's lack of information, lack of transparency, and that it goes back to the brands and businesses to make sure that everybody understands what we are getting into.
Carmen, did you want to? He mentioned, Harsha mentioned the role of an NGO in pushing the industry to be better. Is that something you see as part of your responsibility?
Actually, our approach will be like we feel that, as what I mentioned, there's a gap. It's not only from the consumer side, also from the business side. We will advocate and hope that to engage, and then we hold hand together to create a better world and future. As you mentioned, there you criticism over chemical use. We also, water scarcity is one of the biggest issue in the world. WWF also engaged many brands to do a water stewardship program, which engage locate where their biggest water consumption site is, and then clean the rivers and join hand together with their to study their supply chain. So as for cotton side, we engage like Becker Cotton initiative, helping not only saving water, use less chemical, but also improve lives for the farmers. That's what we do, and nobody can do alone. And everybody, as fashion is like a ecosystem that every party get their own stakeholders, consumer, supply chain, the brands. Everybody, and so as the government, we got to advocate them where everybody got their own part, and only by everybody doing a little bit, we could create a better world. And the biggest room in the world should be the room for improvement. We all know that right now we are doing our best, we feel, but by tomorrow or next week, we get technology or a new stuff that comes up. We can push the bar and we can do more. That's what I feel.
Thank you, Carmen. That's really a hopeful note. I've got two last questions, so we're going to keep it quick because it's really the end now. What do you think about digital garments? Do you see a big future for such industry? Do you think digital garments will be part of real fashion collections in the near future? Anyone here want to talk about digital garments? Is that something any of you are working on? No? Okay, I think we're going to go to the last question, which is probably the best one to end on. Do you think a full circular economy in fashion is possible? And if so, how long will it take? Toby, do you think it's possible?
I think it's not a question about the possibility. It's the tendency and what we should go like this for our future. So it is what we must do now and in the future. It is not talking about the possibility.
So you think it's an inevitability?
Yeah. Yes.
There's no choice.
Yes.
And I think, Harsha, you've already shared a very similar message.
Totally agree. I mean, it has to happen. Otherwise, we will not be having this industry for many more years.
Jessica, Anders?
Yeah, I would like to say that this is also a mindset. Where at Gant we do sustainability because we can and want to, not because we have to. I think that is also a really important thing to remember. And I think that, of course, circularity is a possibility, but it's also a foundation for our industry to be a part of our only and one planet. So I think that is, of course, something that we will do and also enjoy doing, because there are so many things here that we can create, work together on, and also have the help of both consumers and businesses to really work on this. And it's fun. Circularity is really fun. So I'm going to continue with that. And I want to stress that even though there are many things to do, circularity has many answers as well. So it's really good.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you for joining us from Sweden. Anders, any last words about the possibility of a circular fashion economy?
I think honestly it's a long way to go before you can state out that fashion as an industry is circular and truly sustainable. I think that it will be, as in almost any other type of industry, there will be a lot of big companies such as H&M trying and doing loads of initiatives, but then basically will be the tipping point will be a few younger, more agile companies who hasn't have the long legacy to take into consideration that will then push the industry towards the shift. I am not so positive, unfortunately, I'm typically a very positive person, that this will happen before 2030 at a mass, and I think the reasons for that is purely economics. I'm truly believing, and I truly say that I hope that I'm wrong about this thesis, but I think realistically, money speaks, and as long as a lot of these companies, unfortunately, are getting profits and bonuses on not only focusing on circularity, the change will be too slow. But I'm optimistic into one extent as well, but I think that it will take a lot of time since it is complex and the economics speaks against it.
Thank you, Anders. Thank you for joining us from Sweden. Thank you to all the panelists. I think it's been a really fantastic discussion, and everyone's been really honest and open, and thank you for that. I think we're going to close it out there. It's been 2 hours. Hopefully everyone's been really on the edge of their seats. And thank you so much to the organizers for putting on this fantastic discussion. And to the audience, remember, it is going to be available on swedenhk.com. So remember that. And thank you again to the Mills and to everybody else who participated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.